Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please subscribe my channel and like for latest news. Today we're talking about a major development that could redefine the entire landscape of the Ukraine war. The breaking news is that Belarus has officially joined the battlefield, a move that experts are calling one of the most significant shifts since the conflict began. This is not just another political statement or symbolic gesture. This is a real, strategic, and potentially game-changing move that could alter the balance of power across Eastern Europe. Let's break down what's happening, why it matters, and what the consequences might be in the days and weeks ahead. In recent days, reports have confirmed that Belarus has started deploying troops, equipment, and air defense systems directly into areas bordering Ukraine, with some forces reportedly moving southward to support Russian operations. For months, Belarus was seen as a staging ground for Russia, allowing Moscow to launch missiles and transport troops through its territory, but until now, it had avoided sending its own soldiers into the fight. That has changed. Multiple intelligence sources, satellite imagery, and official statements suggest Belarusian units are preparing for active combat roles alongside Russian forces. This development is monumental because it expands the war beyond the traditional Russia-Ukraine confrontation. With Belarus's entry, the northern border of Ukraine, once relatively quiet, has become an active front once again. Kiev now faces a new potential invasion route, something Ukrainian defense officials have been fearing since early 2022. If Belarusian troops push south, they could threaten key supply routes, force Ukraine to divert resources, and stretch its defenses thinner across multiple fronts. The strategic advantage for Russia is clear. By opening a new direction of attack, Moscow forces Ukraine to divide its focus and slow down counteroffensive operations elsewhere. To understand why this is such a pivotal moment, we need to look at Belarus's long-standing relationship with Russia. President Alexander Lukashenko has been one of Vladimir Putin's closest allies, surviving domestic unrest and Western sanctions largely due to Moscow's support. Over the years, Belarus's independence in foreign policy has shrunk dramatically. It's become more dependent on Russian energy, economic aid, and political backing. While Lukashenko initially tried to maintain a balancing act, supporting Russia while avoiding total participation in the war, that approach now seems to have collapsed. By sending troops into Ukraine, Belarus has made a choice that ties its fate even more tightly to Russia's. There are several possible reasons why Belarus has decided to take this step now. First, Russia may have increased pressure behind the scenes, demanding more visible support as it struggles to sustain its long campaign. With Russian forces facing manpower shortages, equipment losses, and declining morale, bringing Belarus into the fight provides an infusion of fresh troops and operational depth. Second, Lukashenko may believe that full cooperation with Russia is his best insurance policy for staying in power. By proving loyalty to Moscow, he ensures continued political and military protection. Third, Belarus might see participation as a way to gain leverage in post-war negotiations should Russia and Ukraine eventually reach a settlement. Whatever the motivation, this move carries huge risks for Minsk. By entering the war directly, Belarus is now exposed to the same international consequences as Russia. New rounds of sanctions are already being discussed in European capitals. Western governments have condemned the move, warning that Belarus will face serious consequences for expanding the war. Economically, Belarus could be hit hard. Its limited exports and reliance on regional trade routes mean that sanctions could cripple its industries, especially in energy and manufacturing. Domestically, the decision could also spark unrest. Many Belarusians have been opposed to involvement in the war from the beginning. In early 2022, when Russian troops used Belarus as a launchpad for attacks on Kiev, protests and online movements inside Belarus called for neutrality. If Belarusian soldiers begin to suffer casualties, public anger may rise sharply, creating new internal tensions for Lukashenko's government. There's also the risk that Belarus's military, which is relatively small and less experienced compared to Russia's, could struggle on the battlefield, leading to losses that undermine morale at home. For Ukraine, this development complicates an already dire situation. Ukrainian intelligence has long suspected that Belarus might eventually get involved, but actual confirmation forces an immediate shift in strategy. The northern regions, including Chernihiv and Volyn, may now need reinforced defenses, drawing units away from the eastern and southern battlefronts. This redistribution of resources could slow Ukraine's counteroffensives, particularly in the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, where heavy fighting continues. The logistical burden also increases. Ukraine must now prepare for possible missile strikes, air raids, and armored incursions from a new direction. At the same time, this move may strengthen international support for Ukraine. The United States, NATO members, and the European Union have already expressed outrage, calling Belarus's involvement an escalation of the war. It's likely we'll see new military aid packages, additional sanctions on Belarusian leadership, and increased deployments of NATO forces near the alliance's eastern borders, especially in Poland and Lithuania. This could deter Belarus from deep incursions but also heighten regional tension, bringing the entire area closer to a broader confrontation. The symbolism of Belarus joining the fight cannot be understated. For Russia, it sends a message of unity and resilience, that Moscow is not isolated, that its allies are still standing by its side. For Ukraine, it's a warning that the conflict is expanding and that no neighboring country can be fully trusted to stay out. For the rest of the world, it signals that this war, far from winding down, may be entering a more volatile phase. Analysts warn that any escalation involving Belarus could trigger new waves of refugees, destabilize neighboring countries, and even draw NATO into closer involvement. Let's also look at the military implications on the ground. Belarus's army, while smaller than Ukraine's, is well equipped and trained in Soviet-era tactics similar to Russia's. Its proximity to Kiev means any offensive from Belarusian territory could target the Ukrainian capital or cut off northern supply lines. Even without large-scale troop movements, Belarus can support Russia through missile systems, drone coordination, and logistical bases. Its airfields have already been used for Russian air operations, and integrating its forces could improve coordination in air defense, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions. However, experts caution that Belarus's entry might not dramatically shift the balance unless it commits significant manpower and resources. The Belarusian military is estimated to have around 45,000 active personnel, many of whom are already stationed for border defense or internal security. Large-scale deployment would require substantial mobilization and could take weeks to fully materialize. Still, even symbolic participation, such as joint operations or shared artillery support, has psychological and strategic consequences. It signals to Ukraine that the North is once again a vulnerable front, and to Russia's enemies that the conflict has regional backing. International reaction continues to intensify. Poland has put its military on heightened alert, citing the possibility of Belarusian provocations near its border. Lithuania and Latvia are reportedly coordinating with NATO to reinforce air defense systems. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned Belarus's decision as a betrayal of peace, warning that any attack from Belarusian soil will be met with a strong response. In Washington, officials are already drafting measures to isolate Belarus economically, targeting its energy exports and banking networks. The European Union, too, is preparing collective actions aimed at cutting off Belarus from Western financial systems. Beyond immediate politics, this event raises deeper questions about the future of the region. With Belarus fully aligning militarily with Russia, the dream of an independent or neutral Belarus may be fading. Lukashenko's regime appears fully tied to Putin's vision for post-Soviet security and influence. This alignment could reshape Eastern Europe's geopolitical map for decades to come. On the other hand, increased isolation might push Belarus into greater dependence on Moscow, eroding what little sovereignty it still maintains. If the war drags on and the costs grow unbearable, that dependency could backfire, destabilizing Lukashenko's rule and creating internal fractures. The situation remains fluid. Military analysts are watching for signs of whether Belarus will launch a full-scale incursion or limit its participation to logistical and support roles. There are also reports suggesting that some Belarusian soldiers are reluctant to fight, raising questions about morale and commitment. Western intelligence agencies believe that Belarus's initial engagement may be limited, but even that limited involvement could change the momentum of the war in critical areas. For ordinary citizens across Eastern Europe, this move heightens anxiety. People fear wider escalation, potential border clashes, or missile strikes spreading beyond Ukraine. The idea of the conflict expanding northward rekindles memories of the war's early days, when Kiev came under direct attack from multiple directions. Once again, Ukrainians living near the northern border are preparing for possible evacuations, while volunteers rush to reinforce fortifications. In the big picture, Belarus joining the battlefield is not just a tactical development, it's a political earthquake. It marks the collapse of any illusion that this war could remain confined or easily managed. The front lines are expanding, alliances are hardening, and the stakes are rising for everyone involved. For Ukraine, it's a new and dangerous chapter. For Russia, it's a reinforcement of strength. For Belarus, it's a gamble that could either secure its future alongside Russia or plunge it into long-term isolation and turmoil. As events unfold, the world will be watching every move, every statement, and every military engagement to see how far Belarus is willing to go. What happens next could determine not only the outcome of the war in Ukraine, but the stability of the entire region. One thing is certain, this decision has changed the game and there's no going back. Thank you for watching this update. Please don't forget to subscribe and like this video to stay informed with the latest developments. We'll continue tracking this story closely and bring you the next updates as soon as they happen. Stay tuned, stay informed, and stay safe.